Where do you think Prado would be right now if he were still racing Supercross?
One thing that I was really impressed with, and I think this is just in Prado's nature, I mean, the dude just looks effortless on a bike.
Results still look pretty dang good for being on last year's setup, and I think he was even on the 23-24 frame,
Yes.
right, without the cutouts in the shock tower. All the other shocks are just married into one adjuster, and WP has a long time had their kit shocks be two separate adjusters.
It's not entirely sure that he's going to be riding a gas cast or even a KTM branded bike in
Really?
2025.
Where do you think Prado would be right now if he were still racing Supercross?
Well, I guess the Red Bull Troy Lee Designs gas team, although he wasn't wearing Troy Lee Designs gear, he was camped underneath that tent. So I still think he'd be aboard an MC 450F. But it is interesting to see where he will land in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. How would you think his Supercross series would be going if he were still racing?
I think he would be getting progressively better, learning as he went. As we saw, he raced Anaheim 1, which is a dry race. We had San Diego, which was a complete mud fest. San Diego, I hesitate to call that a mudder. Like earlier in the day, it was a mudder, but then it started drying out,
Yeah.
and they were able to link up some sections in the rhythm sections. So I don't want to call that a full mudder, but it was like a half mudder, if you will. And then he raced a Triple Crown at Anaheim too. I will say he did get progressively better if you were to compare him from Anaheim 1 to Anaheim 2. I think his lap times did get a little more competitive to the top guys like the Roxons, the Andersons, the Tomacs, Sextons, the Lawrences, you name them. So if you were to keep going on today, I think, man, we'd be seeing him ripping some whole shots, leading some laps maybe here and there at the beginning of the main event, maybe fading back to that 6, 7, 8 spot, battling with those guys like Malcolm Stewart, Justin Barsha. But man, I think you'd be doing quite good.
Same. It seems like sometimes when you see people do a shortened version of the series, they ride with less, I won't say less care, but knowing they're not invested in winning the championship. And then when they come back, sometimes it almost bites them because they're more invested trying to win it. I remember watching Zach Osborne come over from Europe, and he was racing for Factory Connection just for a few Supercross races, and I think he won like, maybe he didn't win them, but he finished really well. And I think a lot of it helps when you can just show up to a race knowing that, like, I'm just here to race and have fun. I could see him having probably a continuing good season had he kept racing just with that in mind, like, I'm just here to learn, not push it. And we've seen a lot of guys maybe not make mistakes, but they've had mistakes happen because they're pushing it every weekend to finish well, to place well. And for him, it's been let it come to him as it happens. But man, the fact that he's being competitive in the 450 class in his rookie year and just jumping over the 250 class is impressive because everybody in that 450 class is previous 250 champions, at least for the top 20.
Yeah.
So, fuck, man, that's something else just to get in there and mix it up with those guys.
Yeah. First off, I mean, he must wear an XL size underwear because the balls on that kid come over
For
and go
sure.
straight to the 450 class. We haven't seen that.
No.
We've seen Ferrandis, Roxon, Muscan, all those guys come over. Granted, they were still in the MX2 class when they came from
Yeah.
Europe to, race here in the U.S. And
Christophe Purcell.
Christophe Porcel,
The
another good,
250s.
yes, another good one. They went on to win, race wins and championships in 250 and 450 class, a majority of them. But just to come over here and just to take the bull by the horns and go straight 450 is pretty gnarly. Now,
That's some
granted,
confidence.
that is some confidence. Now, granted, there is a caveat here. He is a 2-time MX2 champion and an MXGP champion. He is the reigning and current defending champion in the MXGP class. And right now, he's really kicking ass and taking names with those guys and the likes of Jeffrey Hurlings, Roman Febvre. I mean, you name him, Jeremy Sewer. Like, the list goes on and on. So, I mean, the dude knows how to ride a bike. He's very, very talented. So it's no shocker to see him do well over here in the U.S.
Yeah. It seems like he adapted pretty quick. I mean, just I think to pick up the lines that they do, at least the pro lines, because the way an amateur rides Supercross or even a professional does, but maybe not always making the night show, the line selection is very different. A lot of it is because of the speed that they have going into corners and coming out versus other riders that maybe aren't that quick. So it seems like not only did he pick up on how to ride Supercross, but also to ride the pro lines pretty quickly as well. And that's impressive.
Yeah. One thing that I was really impressed with, and I think this is just in Prado's nature, I mean, the dude just looks effortless on a bike. He's one of those guys like a Jet Lawrence where you just watch him ride and it's just like, man, could I ride like that one day? Like just one
Hmm.
lap. Like how sick would it be, right? But one thing I was really impressed with was he didn't look sketchy. Like he didn't
Good
look like
point.
out of his element. Like it looked just like, yeah, he was taking his time and maybe not going the speed of the front runners, but he didn't look sketchy one bit. Like I can't recall one moment where I was like, he's going over the bars or like he looks like a fish out of water or anything like that. I mean, even the social media he put out, the social media clips that he put out preseason
Hmm.
before Anaheim won, he looked fast, smooth. I mean, feet on the pegs through those 180 bull turns. Like it was just Jorge Prado like another day, just just
Yeah.
riding. Even though it's completely different from from motocross to supercross, the dude just looked like he was in his comfort zone.
Hmm. Yeah. It was fun to look at. We reviewed his bike a little bit for Supercross because we have that other video about Chase Sexton and what he's been running. So to give some comparisons to that, Prado was running and did run the WP comb out fork or some variation of that from his entire time once he got there on Supercross to his ending race as well. One thing we did notice was he had a different shock on his bike than what Chase Sexton has been running, and it looks like Malcolm Stewart. They seem to have the, let's say, newest version of the WP kit shock that they have on the factory racing level, not something that's available to the public. What we buy on the public is still the all silver shocks, and it has the two separated low speed and high speed compression adjusters on it, and they're about equal in size as well. Since then, they've come out with another shock that looks more similar to the stock version, and it looks kind of a bit like a stock Kawasaki Showa shock, meaning the shock body is black. The low speed adjuster is much bigger in size, or more, let's say, common size as a Japanese shock, but then there's still another small adjuster next to it. And then since then, they have even newer shock that Sexton has been running, and so has Malcolm at least. We got to verify with some other bikes. And that's where they have now married the two adjusters into being one adjuster again, meaning the high speed and low speed is all centered in one adjuster, just like our OEM shocks are, and very similar to how the Showa kit shock and how the mostly the Showa kit shock is before it. So to me, what stands out is the fact of how good his results were on, I guess we could almost say, last year's platform in terms of suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we see the top guy, Chase, apparently not too stoked on the settings. Granted, they're riding they're different speeds, but Prado doesn't seem that far off in terms of speed. And give him some more time, who knows if he could be there as well.
Is there an advantage, you think, or maybe even a disadvantage? Well, I shouldn't say disadvantage, but do you think there is an advantage by marrying those two shock adjusters together?
Um, Man, it's I'd assume they have pros and cons for both setups for it. One could be, and in different areas. One could be manufacturability. Another could be tuning and how easy it is to take the shock off the bike, tune an adjuster, put one back in. But I would think keeping all the pressure in the shock more, let's say, centrally located in one area instead of having one adjuster here and one there, and then the valves open at different times. Keep in mind, pressure is equal all and everywhere when we apply it, liquid pressure or gas. But we definitely do have times when we need a system such as a shock absorber to open and close a valve within a certain time period without it affecting the other valve negatively. A simpler way to put this is when you rev your bike at a very high RPM, the intake valves start opening at the same time as the exhaust. We call that exhaust overlap. And your engine isn't running very efficient at that time. It's essentially just gas is just going in it and out it. What that means is it's very important upon the state at which the engine is in, meaning it's very important that the intake valves open and then they close all the way before the exhaust open and close. We could maybe see something similar inside of a shock absorber of having two different paths for the oil to flow through that are distinctly apart from each other.
Hmm.
So I'd imagine having that all centered in one area might be more beneficial for that. But in my mind, I would think that's pretty low in terms of how it actually affects the feel of the shock.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe on paper, maybe on the shock dyno, and a few other, let's say, very like high level way of measuring it or math, you could certainly maybe make a case for it. But I'm curious to find out because all the other shocks are just married into one adjuster, and WP has a long time had their kit shocks be two separate adjusters for that, and also take into account just how far the oil has to flow to get to the nitrogen tank, because that's where it's going through. It's going through the adjuster into the nitrogen side and compressing that gas. So at least having one adjuster and all in one area is probably the shortest distance for that oil to flow as well.
Yeah, I guess in a sense that'd be increasing the efficiency.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's probably the best and simplest way to put it.
So
yeah, it's almost like you simplified it a little bit, and because that's going to be more efficient as well. So that'd be interesting to see. But I mean, his results still look pretty dang good for being on last year's setup, and I think he was even on the 23-24 frame.
Yes.
Right, without the cutouts in the shock tower.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. It's impressive because, you know, technically he was in the last generation or last year's shock, but he's also in the last year's chassis as well. Now, it is important to note that he is currently running the factory edition chassis, which does have those cutouts near the shock tower, and the MXGP series. So I wonder why he elected to choose. I'm sure he had the option.
And he has a new shock, the latest shock for the MXGP series.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, so he did upgrade on both fronts, not only on the shock, the suspension side of things, but the chassis side of things as well. He is running the latest and greatest from WP and Gas. So I wonder why he opted to choose for the old gen chassis in Supercross as well as the old gen shock, and now update to the new gen shock and the new gen chassis.
Yeah, I'm curious if it was even an option for him. Because at the same time, not to go back to this, but Chase wasn't even happy with his Honda. At least that's what they say.
Yeah.
So how much is it the KTM isn't good, or they say the KTM group, and how much of that could be specific to Chase, and maybe all the other settings that they have for their bike are still very competitive, you know? And then maybe this Prado doesn't know, meaning in a sense he doesn't have a lot of reference points for other Supercross bikes and how they feel. He knows what they've given him so far.
Right.
Chase at least has experience on being 250 Honda team, the 450 Honda team, different brands of suspension, Showa and KYB, and then now for KTM. So he has something to relate it to, whereas Prado does not. I wonder how they test with somebody like that, meaning like on that level of a pro he is, and if they just show up with 3 different sets of Supercross suspension, and one's soft for Supercross, one is plush, and one's super stiff, or kind of how they approach that.
Yeah, I wonder how much they've had to stiffen up his settings, because I'm sure the speed probably increased a lot from the first day they had him over here in the US to when he left after Anaheim too. So I wonder how much adjustment they've had to do is like, okay, we're just getting stiffer, maybe even faster on the rebound because he's hitting those transitions with so much more force and pushing the bike through these transitions in the rhythm section and the turns. So I wonder how much stiffer and more aggressive they've gotten with this setup from day one to the end.
Yeah, because I would think once he started racing, that really gives you that extra level of aggression. You practice a bunch leading up to your first race, you go do your race, and then after your race, you're like, got it. You go, okay, cool, I've been practicing like this, the race experience was like this, now I know how I need to adjust my practice intensity. So good point. They probably have been modifying the bike settings with him as he's been improving over time.
Yeah, and speaking with the bike, it's not entirely sure that he's going to be riding a Gas or even a KTM branded bike in 2025. Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the strong rumors, we'll start with the strongest rumor right now, is Monster Energy Kawasaki.
Really?
Yeah.
So they got Anderson and Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
What are their contract agreements?
So Anderson just re-upped on a 2-year deal starting in 2024, and that will end in 2025.
Ah, so he's good.
So he's good, which leaves the number 9 of Adam Sancerillo. And we all love Adam.
I've never seen him not on Kawasaki.
Right, exactly. We've seen him on Kawasaki forever. Like I said, we all love Adam. And I'm not going to speak too much on his future just because we both really respect Adam. We don't know what his future plans are. We're not going to speculate on that. And the video, quite frankly, isn't about Adam.
Real quick, what happened to his knee in Supercross?
So that was a scary one.
Shot after St. Louis, by the way.
Yeah, just after St. Louis. This is the Monday after St. Louis. We're heading into an off weekend, but Good thing it is an off weekend because I think nothing is broken, but I saw an Instagram story on AC's Instagram
Yeah.
and his ankle looked pretty bruised. It sounded like a high ankle sprain. I think that I actually had him on the Peacock broadcast and he said,
Cool.
hey, nothing seems broken. Got it x-rayed. Everything came back good. Just seems like a high ankle sprain. So he just has a lot of bruising, a lot of swelling around that ankle.
Okay.
I originally thought it was the knee too, and
Same.
I know he's done some ACLs in the past, and my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is another long road of an ACL that's at least 6 months,
Hmm.
and this is probably the last race that we'll see in Cerullo, at least for the year, if
Yeah.
not further.
Yeah.
So, good thing is, it sounds like he's going to be okay, and I hope to see
Okay.
him at the following round, which is in Foxborough.
Cool. Man, so but his ride is possibly up for
Yeah, he
somebody else.
yeah, he's done after this year. Now, I'm not saying he's done with Kawasaki. We do not know that yet. Kawasaki could elect to run a three-rider team if they
True.
choose to do so, if they have the budget to do so. Cowie has been really faithful to Adam and vice versa. Adam has been really faithful to Kawasaki. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the strongest rumor is that Monster Energy Kawasaki seat for Jorge Prado as of right now.
Prado could be going to Cali then.
Prado could be going to Cowie, which is quite the change from him. It's quite the departure because he's been with KTM for a very long time, or the KTM group, I should say. He's on KTM.
Mhm.
I mean, he won EMX titles with them in the 65 class, the 125 class. He won 2 MX2 titles for them. He raced a season for them, or 2 seasons for them in the 450 class, I believe. He's now with the Gas group since 2022, so he's been with them for a couple of years. But yeah, he's been under the KTM umbrella now for quite a while, and it's going to be quite the change. Not only just coming from Europe to the U.S., but switching teams as well, learning an all new bike. I mean, that's asking a lot. But hey,
Yeah.
rumor is it's a 3-year deal,
Wow.
so that's a long deal in my opinion. Normally we see a 2-year deal with maybe an option,
Mhm.
but if it's just a straight up 3-year deal, that's a long term commitment
For
to
sure.
Jorge Prado.
Yeah, because I mean, the other options would be Honda's on the openings,
Mhm.
unless they sign a third guy.
Yeah, and
Stars obviously got a pretty packed roster.
yeah,
And then yeah, I think the other teams, I don't know if they have the resources or funding to possibly sign somebody like that.
kind of go process of elimination of where he wouldn't go is I don't see him going to Triumph. It'd be a first year operation. Granted, he would be the only rider in the 450 class as far as Supercross. I just don't see him going there. I think that's maybe too much of a gamble.
Yeah, right.
Beta, I just don't see them honestly having the funding. I don't know if Colt Nichols and Benny Bloss's deals extend to 2025, but I just don't see him going to Beta. Honda HRC, that's the Lawrence zone. I mean, no one's really infiltrating that. So we'll weed out that one. Star Yamaha, there is a world where maybe that could happen. Eli Tomac's deal is up, but obviously I think Star has a commitment to Tomac, and I just don't think they're just going to push him off the wayside for Prado. They obviously have Cooper Webb, who is contracted through the rest of 2024 and 2025. J. Coop's deal, sounds like his deal is up, but he does have a performance incentive to where if he gets certain results, he can elect to stay.
Mm.
So that's very interesting. I do think Star is a pretty unlikely option, so I'm going to put that one aside as well.
Okay.
When we fiddle through some other teams such as HEP Suzuki, I don't think that'll happen.
They got their main guy.
Yeah, they got their main guy with Ken Roxon. Who else is left? There's Husqvarna. That technically is an option. It is still under the KTM group. I just don't think Prado necessarily fits the branding with the Rockstar Husqvarna team, quite honestly. So if I do think he's going to go to a different brand, KTM, it's, going to be KTM alongside Chase Sexton.
Okay.
Aaron Plessinger's deal is up at the end of this year.
It is.
Yeah, so KTM could elect to keep AP or maybe even move AP to the Husqvarna side of things because although Malcolm Stewart is locked in for this year and next year, 2025, Christian Craig's deal is up.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so there could be some musical chairs underneath the KTM group. So like I said, they could elect to choose to move Aaron over to the Husky team and fill Aaron's spot with Jorge Prado alongside Chase Sexton underneath the Red Bull KTM truck.
Interesting. But, man, when you put it that way, it seems like the Kawasaki is a very likely option, especially with your previous history of wanting to sign the next best thing and giving him some time. So 3 years almost sounds like them giving him a year to just get experience and then the other 2 years is your normal 2-year contract. Like,
Yeah.
all right, you've been to every national, you've at least experienced every track, you've done a full 18 or 17 round Supercross series now. So it almost, that'd be cool to see. They got the technology, they got a great bike. They, Anderson would probably be a great guy to at least give him some, maybe not mentoring, but
Maybe some guidance.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like, hey man, I've done this, I've been here, and not like teach him or coach him, but just somebody that he can ask questions to, and Anderson can give him, here's what I've tried, done, or experienced, and that'd be helpful in that regards. But yeah, that'd be helpful because at least it's the second year on the new bike.
Mhm.
At least he's not
That's-
having to figure out
Yeah.
a new 2024 model. By the time he gets it, it'll have been well written by Cincerillo, Anderson, and whoever else is their test rider, which I think Brock Tuchel.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Which they're all pretty similar size. It looks like between Anderson, Prado, and Tuchel. Maybe not Cincerillo. He might be the tallest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to touch on that Kawasaki thing in a second, but you might be asking yourself, well, why doesn't he just sign with Red Bull Charlie Designs Gas? You know,
Yeah.
that's a very obvious option. Just move him right on over. Well, they've been running a one-man team with Justin Barsha for a very long time, and he is contracted through 24 and 25.
Really? Okay.
So that team is privately owned by Troy Lee.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not
really?
necessarily, yes, exactly. So it's privately owned. So yes, I don't know if they could work out, if Troy could work out a deal with KTM and say, hey, I need more budget to grab Prado. Maybe they can work something out, but at the end of the day, it's like you're either asking KTM or other sponsors that, hey, I need more funding to sign a high-profile rider.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Bam isn't necessarily the cheapest rider, although he's not having the best year in 2024. I'm still pretty sure he's worth a pretty penny.
Yeah, he's still relevant. Great rider.
Mhm.
He's a good brand ambassador. He's going to be like a Bob Hanna
Yeah.
type guy in the sense of like whenever he does hang up the boots, like you know who Justin Barsh is, whether you grew up watching him race. You just know he's Bam Bam. So yeah, that's a good point. His stock is high still.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily unlikely, but if I had to guess, it's going to be between that Red Bull KTM seat, that open seat with Aaron Plessinger's contract being up, and that spot at Monster Energy Kawasaki.
When was their last championship?
With Kawasaki,
Yeah. Was it Eli?
Eli, 2020
Really?
for Supercross.
Okay.
I want to say, when was Eli's last year? 2021. Yeah, they haven't won since Eli, actually.
Wow.
Because Osborne won that 2020 Pro Motocross Championship aboard a Rockstar Husqvarna. Then we had Ferrandis in 2021, Pro Motocross, obviously, aboard a Star Yamaha. 22, we saw Tomac aboard a Star Yamaha.
Yeah.
In 23, we just had Jet Lawrence have a perfect season.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
as a rookie.
that's how that went.
Yeah. So it's been a little while since Kawasaki has won a championship, so they are due.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, they have an all-new bike, and they want to prove that bike. Now, that bike has not won a race since it's been
Good point.
introduced this year. And, they are due not only for a championship, but for some race wins. And I think, as you alluded to earlier, the 3-year deal is really cool. I think that shows a long-term commitment to Prado, but also maybe a lenience period, especially since for that first year of Supercross. It's, hey, make all the rounds, get some seat time, learn as much as you can, and prep for the following year. But when you go to Pro Motocross in 2025, I think he's going to be a tough customer for that Pro Motocross title.
Right.
Granted, we're still a ways out from that. We're a little over a year out from that. Obviously, Jet Lawrence is going to be good. I'd imagine Hunter's going to bump it up in the next year and a bit as well. Who knows if guys like Cooper Webb and Tomac are still racing, or well, Cooper Webb will be racing, but who knows if
Sure.
Tomac sticks around. So there is going to be some stiff competition in that 450 class for that title in 2025, that Pro Motocross title. But man, I mean, when you see his current form in the MXGP class, I mean, Prado is he's looking really good. He's looking unbelievable. I mean, he just went 1-1-1 between the qualifying race on Saturday and 1-1 on the motos. I mean, he whole-shotted everything, led every lap. I mean, the guy was on rails. Granted, it was his home race, so maybe the home crowd and the home environment did give him that extra little boost on race day. But, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from him. I mean, he rode phenomenal in Spain. So we're heading into a sand track this weekend for round 3 in the MXGP, and Prado is a sand rider. So It's going to be interesting to see him duke it out with Hurlings. Maybe Hurlings steps it up a notch and volleys for that win a little bit. But man, Prado, it seems to be on top form. And if he stays injury-free and even backs up his MXGP title in 2024, man, it's going to be exciting to see him in Pro Motocross in 2025.
Well, let us know what you guys think where Prado's going to end up, what equipment he might be on, or if we're just totally wrong.
We might be. So thank you guys for watching. And if you aren't subscribed, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching again, and we'll catch you in next week's episode.